first moved to the Philippines as an expat, I thought safety might be my biggest concern, but I never expected this to happen. Within a few months, I was confronted with several issues that would probably have never been a problem back home. Well, hi, I'm Eric with Island Expats. And being a foreigner and living abroad can be exciting and rewarding. It can also bring additional risks that you may not have expected. Be sure to stay till the end, as I'll be showing you some actual footage that I shot of some of the events that I've experienced here in the Philippines, like typhoons, very crazy drivers, some car and truck crashes, earthquakes, and everything else in between while I've been here. A lot has happened. For example, driving here is just a whole different experience than back in the States. Well, let me show you what I'm talking about because it can be so crazy. It's a bit intimidating at first, so it's kind of hard to describe. So let me just show you. Here's some footage. Oh, jeez. Where do you think you're going?
What happened? It's so close. Look at her, the mirror of his car.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's so, if it's a little space.
Now, this is the craziness of Tag Balearin, which that's kind of an interesting helmet right there with the ears on it. I'm not sure what that is, but
Oh, so dangerous, that one.
the people, the way they drive here, and they come right up next to you, like in the U.S. you got kind of some space that you expect between cars. This guy came up and practically touched my mirror. That black car right here in front of me. He came alongside me. And then these scooter things, called tuk-tuks, the green one like right here, they're just coming in and out all over the place. Any possible little space they can get. But it is just craziness. We usually do this on a scooter, and that's crazy. It's a little safer in a car, but like look at this lady, she just jumped in front of us, and because we stopped, then these guys now jump in front of us. Look how close this guy is to us right here. I'm in the right just. And the police here don't do anything. That's just not what they do. They don't get involved. Which is kind of cool in the sense there's no speeding tickets. You just kind of open it up, especially on the scooter, and then you just try to make sure you don't hit anybody or anything. So this is downtown Tag Balearin. In fact, this is Jollibee right here, looking out the window, and that's like their McDonald's, which is right on the corner here. So we're gonna try to navigate our way through. Okay, no, the light is not. See what I mean? The first time I drove around the traffic square which is at the Catholic Church downtown, which we call the Poblacion. That's the term for downtown. And this is in Tagbilaran, the city next to Panglao. I thought this was just totally crazy. I mean, there's like no rules. Everyone's out for themselves. There's a driver to the left of you, to the right of you, in front of you, behind you. They're all coming in at the same time. But I learned that you need to be aggressive just like everyone else, because that is what they expect. And if you hesitate, you create a problem. And no one else is going to hesitate. So don't be the problem. It really is every man for himself. That's how they drive here. And it's not that it's like totally wrong. It's just how they do things. They're very aggressive drivers, and it's pretty scary the first time you go downtown. Let me show you some actual footage that I shot myself of what can go wrong while driving through the Philippines. Each of these scenes I happened to drive by right after it happened. So this is all footage from my actual camera. Let's take a look. So,
This is a good food. Naon sana iya?
Ma'am?
Naon sana?
Bangga lagi, ma'am.
Ah. Naporting ko na
Hello. Ha?
Nay namatay. Nay na disla nay tao ya.
Ito lang tail.
Ha?
May patay isa.
Sudo.
Okay, bantay,
Tao. Thank you. There's two. One dead and the other one cut the legs. Okay, open the window.
There are driving rules here, and there is a written and practical driving exam. However, many people riding scooters are not licensed, or they've paid what I call a fixer at the LTO office, which is like their equivalent of the DMV that we have in the United States, Department of Motor Vehicles. It's like the Land and Transportation Office, and you could pay a fixer instead of actually taking the exams, both written and the practical, where you drive behind the wheel. So some people do that. Some people just actually don't do it at all. They just drive. And that creates a dangerous situation when you have some Filipinos that actually don't know the driving laws or the rules of the road, and they just kind of learn it from experience instead of going through their DMV type book, which they do have, which is another weird thing. The LTO office says they don't, but I found it online, and there was a PDF of 100 pages, and it was just as detailed in driving rules and laws as it was in the US. There's no way you'd pass that test without studying that book first. So this can cause a dangerous situation when so many people don't go through the proper learning process in order to get their driver's license. There is a law in the Philippines that you have to go to driving school. Well, once again, if you pay off the right person, they'll just sign off on the certificate. And you really need to study that book from the LTO. Their driving test is just as rigorous on the written exam that you take at a computer as it is in the States or in Canada. You can ask Lynn. She just recently studied and passed both of her exams. I wanted to make sure she was safe on the road. And now she appreciates why I had her do that, because she knows the rules. So it was a good thing for us to do. It's also amazing what Filipinos will carry on their motorcycles. It's very common to see two people on a motorcycle. But I've seen 3, 4, and even 5 people on one scooter. Usually it's a family or some teenagers. And you'll see anything from people carrying groceries to pipes or plumbing fixtures, lumber, anything you can imagine. Here's some footage of some of the things I've actually seen on the road. I think it'll make you laugh. Next, the rainy season is May through November in most locations in the Philippines, including here in Panglao, Bohol. That also means during the rainy season, the chance of typhoons. And we had a super typhoon come through our area just a couple weeks ago as it brushed the top part of Bohol on its way to Samar, Leyte, and finally Luzon. Now, it did come across Bohol where I am, but thankfully we're a bit to the south of Bohol and Panglao. We're the furthest point away, and so we get less wind and rain from these typhoons. But that same super typhoon just a couple of weeks ago that just kind of brushed us absolutely drilled Cebu City. And from a perspective, Cebu City is only 45 miles away, or 72 kilometers, as the crow flies. I mean, it's really not that far. There was so much rain that it really flooded the place. Let me show you what happened in Cebu City and Mindanao area. We often stay at the Fairfield Inn in Mindanao City when we visit Cebu City. In fact, we have a reservation for just 2 weeks from now. When we go there, we like to go to the S&R Club store. It's one of our favorites because they have some of the things that we have in Costco in the U.S. It's a wholesale club. And then from there, after we get some of the things that you can't really find in the rest of this area of the Philippines and the Visayas, definitely not on Bohol. So there's certain brands and a few items that you can get at SNR that you cannot get in the grocery stores. So that's how we like to go there. And then we like to go to the Ayala Mall area. There's a lot of good restaurants up there, some good shopping. And one of our favorite restaurants in the Ayala Mall is Texas Roadhouse there in Cebu City. But this place was an absolute mess just 2 weeks ago, as the city was totally flooded and the drainage system could not keep up with it. There was a lot of questions asked about that system. So if the rain and wind didn't get you from the typhoon, then the flooding will, which honestly is much worse and does most of the damage from these typhoons. It's really sad to see challenged areas without proper drainage totally flooded, and the effect it has on the poor people that live there, they get washed out of their homes. Usually it's along the drainage areas or the rivers, and it's just really sad to see. You know, after watching the path of the typhoons for this entire season, I've been in the Philippines for the whole season, and there was a definitive pathway that these typhoons follow almost every single time. They only vary slightly a little bit north or a little bit south from the main pathway that goes right through the central Philippines, which would be the central Visayas. They start in eastern Philippines towards the south a little bit of Mindanao. And then they head straight into the central Visayas, and they run over Leyte and Samar almost every single time. If it drops just a little bit south, it'll hit Cebu. And there's a lot of other islands that are just north of Leyte and Samar, and they also get drilled. In fact, I guess anything facing the eastern seaboard and a little bit towards the north, well, that gets hit the hardest. And it's just due to the way that the typhoon spins. It spins in a circle, and so islands to the east, like Siargao and Dinagat Islands, can be direct targets without any protection. And then islands more to the south, like Bohol, don't often get hit directly, since the spin of the typhoon creates less wind on the bottom of the spinning typhoon. Whereas at the top, which is usually toward the north, it tends to be much stronger from the effect of the typhoon, so there's more wind and rain damage. This is very consistent typhoon after typhoon. The typhoons then continue on in a kind of a northwest pattern until they hit either north or central Luzon. And it's just about every single time. So if you don't want to be in a typhoon area, don't live in central or northern Luzon, right? Manila is just a few hours to the south from central Luzon to kind of give you a perspective. And it often gets hit with heavy rain from these storm systems, but does not usually take a direct hit nearly as often in the Manila area. They just get a lot of rain and sometimes some wind. But the central and especially the north part, it just goes right over the top, and then it continues past that, exiting the Philippines and heads towards Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the other areas there, Macau, China, etc. Well, in the last few months, we've experienced several strong earthquakes on top of the typhoons. In fact, it rocked us pretty good one night on our second-story condo unit in Bohol. It turned out that the first major earthquake was in northern Cebu and the town of Boco. This happened on September 30th of this year. And unfortunately, one of the Spanish Catholic churches absolutely crumbled to the ground. The earthquake there registered 6.9 on the Richter scale. The next quake was in Davao, on the island of Mindanao, on October the 10th, just less than 2 weeks later. And it had two earthquakes, a 7.4, which is massive, and a 6.8. Tsunami warnings were issued, and there was a lot of widespread damage and a lot of aftershocks that shook the area. You know, the last major quake that hit Bohol directly was clear back in 2013 with a magnitude of 7.2. In many areas of Bohol, both power and water was not restored for several months. In fact, you need power to run the water filtration plants since you should not drink the tap water, right? But all of that was taken out, and then you couldn't get the bottled water because they didn't have power to run these little small water filtration plants that you see in the side of the road. We call them filling stations. So it really was a problem for people to get by. They had to get a hold of bottled water, basically. Well, after traveling the Philippines for the last 10 years and living there this past year, I feel as an expat, it's mostly safe as far as the travel goes throughout the Philippines. I mean, in general, outside of a few bad areas that are mostly in Manila, I've felt safe everywhere that I've gone. And crime in general in the Philippines is less than in the U.S. and in the West. However, that said, there is one island and an area in particular that you must use caution, as there are several areas that are not safe for foreigners, and that is on the island of Mindanao. There are places you can visit on Mindanao, like Cagayan de Oro, which we call CDO, and Davao, a major city, the third largest city in the Philippines. But as you're driving from place to place, which I've done recently in August, from one side of Mindanao to the other, through the mountains and all that, expect government checkpoints, especially in the mountainous regions where there's a fear a little bit of either NPA or some other type of terrorist group. Now, Mindanao is an amazing place, and you really get to experience the true Philippines by going there. It covers the gamut of experiences, from native people that are still living off the grid in bamboo huts, especially in the mountains area, to a mixed population of Catholics, Christians, and Muslims. Most of the other islands are just Catholics and Christians, and just a few Muslims, a little bit more, maybe Luzon. But most of the islands don't have that element. Now, the Muslims tend to keep to themselves, and in general, foreigners should absolutely stay away from what they call the autonomous region, because it is controlled and managed by the Muslim population. As you can see, this includes Marawi City, the Zamboanga Peninsula, and all the way down to the island chain through the Sulu Sea area. Let me be clear. Stay away from this area of the Philippines. It is not safe for you as a foreigner, and they don't want you there. Don't go there. You're asking for major problems. As a case in point, let me tell you about a battle that happened in 2017 that'll kind of prove my point. I'm talking about Marawi City, which is only 41 miles from Cagayan de Oro, or about 66 kilometers, right? Not that far of a drive, within an hour. There was a direct confrontation with the Philippine military starting in May of 2017, where the battle was fought from house to house with many foreign Muslim fighters who actually joined them, and they were part of this ISIS group, all coming in to fight this altercation. They actually came in through the south, through other Muslim countries. Well, the battle lasted for a full 5 months, and it started when the Philippine military attempted to arrest this one guy named Isnalan Hapalan. It's quite a name there. He was the head of the ISIS faction in the Philippines. And when they came after him, they weren't able to get him the first time, and he declared Marawi kind of an area of a caliphate, or holy war battle type thing. This siege included house-to-house combat, where militants went in there and fortified the buildings, and they just used them as their strongholds. The Philippine military, which included both the army and special forces, along with airstrikes, and used artillery in this battle. In the end, after 5 months, 920 militants were killed, along with 165 government troops. Again, this is within an hour of CDO. The battle officially ended on October 16th of 2017, which I kind of find interesting because I actually was in Mindanao in 2019, and I remember getting stopped by a guard and him telling me, an army guard, on the side of the road saying, we're under martial law. So that battle ended that day, October 16th, 2017, when the Philippine forces, they stormed the militant hideout and reportedly killed both Hapilon himself and a key Mountie leader. They were fighting together, the two groups. The next day, October 17th, 2017, President Duarte declared Marawi liberated from the militants. I mean, this is some pretty crazy stuff, taking on directly the Philippine military from a residential area. But luckily, this was contained to just this one city and just this one region. I've traveled Mindanao from one side to the other outside of the autonomous region. I literally traveled from Davao up to Mati City along the coast, and then up a couple hours to Maragusan in the mountains, and then all the way back down again to Davao, across to Davao del Sur, and then across the Bukidnon Mountains. So I've kind of traveled a lot of Mindanao. And the thing was, generally, I felt safe, but there was just a little bit of an element there. And it just felt very different than any of the other Philippine islands that I've been on. So for me personally, it's not going to be my preference, as it's just a different feel to it. I mean, you're going through these government checkpoints about every 10 kilometers, and then they're wanting to either see who you are in the car or check your paperwork, and they're looking for either NPA, which is New People's Army, which is like a terrorist group, or some other faction. So there's still that element there. Now, Lynn has family in Mindanao, and we visited a whole bunch of them for a couple of weeks. And it was a really fascinating place to visit. In fact, I love the Bukidnon Mountains, which are very much like equivalent to something like the Sierras in California or the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Lots of rivers, waterfalls, just incredible landscape. Some of the most amazing beauty that I've ever seen anywhere in the Philippines. It really is a beautiful place in this Bukidnon Mountains. The cool part was it was only in the 70s during the day and like 60 degrees at night. It totally cooled off, so you get out of the heat of the rest of the Philippines. Overall, Filipinos treat foreigners with respect, and I mean a lot of respect. They're very kind to us and compassionate. They're just a wonderful people. Honestly, the Filipinos are the friendliest people I've ever met. I've traveled through Europe, I've traveled through Asia, China, Taiwan, Japan. I found the Philippines to be the friendliest people. But the cultures can be very different depending where you are in Southeast Asia. And I just feel like the Filipinos are just the most welcoming people that I've ever met. Now, for me, living on Bohol, I feel safe. I've gone all out through Bohol exploring. I've never really felt unsafe anywhere. In fact, I felt safe when Lynn and I stayed in Cebu. We were in the Mactan area, and we've stayed in Cebu City multiple times. No problem. I felt safe in Dumaguete. I felt safe in Siargao Island, BGC, Makati, and most other popular places that expats would go. In fact, in all these places, they felt safer to me than most major cities in the U.S. I think in general, crime is much lower in the Philippines, especially compared to the U.S. There's only just a few areas in the Manila area where you got to be careful. Once you're outside of that, it's relatively safe. That's been my experience from traveling back and forth for 10 years and now living there this year. Now, most smaller cities, especially the province areas, have very low crime rates, especially compared to the West. And in all my years of traveling here, I've never once felt threatened. Not even once. In fact, if there's going to be an issue, you usually hear about it between expats, not local Filipinos. And it typically has something to do with a bar or a girl or something stupid like that, right? It's not the Filipinos that will cause you a problem, it's other expats. I guess that's just something to think about because, we are a guest in their country. And I think we have to remember that. You're in a foreign country and you're a guest there, right? You don't have to go there. You choose to go there and they choose to accept you. So behave yourself. And if you're respectful to the Filipino people and you act appropriately with their culture, which includes not yelling at them or raising your voice, that's considered very rude in Filipino culture. If you have an issue with somebody, you take them aside, you lower your voice, and you work it out. But if you accept how the Filipino people are, and you're kind and respectful to them, everything's going to be okay. Doesn't matter if you're going to visit the Philippines or live there. It'll all work out. Just don't expect it to be like the U.S. or whatever country that you're coming from. It's not. It's different. It's not your country, and you're not going to change the dynamics of their culture or their way of life, right? I mean, there's like a Filipino late thing, and I see it all the time. Often people are 30 minutes late to scheduled events. It's just part of life there. And things move at a slower pace of life. And there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's corruption. We're at the LTO office, and the guard asked if we wanted to pay the fixer in order to get the license instead of taking the test. The guard that's protecting their DMV. Crazy stuff. Can't make it up. Anyway, it doesn't matter how you feel about the place, actually, because no matter how much you complain, it's not going to change. Like anywhere, there are pros and cons to living in whatever country that you're in. There's going to be things that you like and things that you don't like. And if there was a perfect place to live, they'd probably ask you to leave. Think about that one. Well, it's no different in the Philippines. There's some good things and some things that are like, that's different. But if you can accept the fact that life is different there, things are just done at a slower pace with more bureaucracy, takes more time, and you can be a little bit patient about it and have some grace, then it'll just go easier for you, right? It's done differently there. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's done differently. Just accept it. And then you'll have a much better experience and you'll really enjoy your time in the Philippines.
That's fun, huh? So I was filming down the river and all of a sudden I went in really deep and slipped off a rock. It was in over my head. I had to hand off the camera to Lynn. And next thing you know, we're floating down the river. Oh, this is the river we just floated down.
Well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you found this video interesting and maybe learned something along the way. If you've got any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section, as I really do my best to respond to every comment. And I appreciate you guys taking your time to let me know what you think of the videos or give me your thoughts. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.